Okay, this video is about how to remove the alternator on an Alfa 159. Mine's a TI, it's a 2.4 diesel. It's an '09 build, 939. Alternator has failed completely. I couldn't do anything about getting the back off it or anything like that because all the diodes are they're all under a plate. That comes off, of course, but it's failed, and the auto electrician didn't want to know anything about it. And also the clutch on the front is starting to go as well, so it's starting to slip. It's designed to only grab in one direction. Okay, I found very little online about getting it off, so I decided to make a quick video to show people how to get to the bugger. Now, put the car back together a little bit to show you how it all comes apart, but I thought I'd give you a bit of an overview. Okay, so first thing you want to do is get it up on some stands. I usually put the stands on the top of the joint there, the flexible joint that's there, and you need it on both sides. You take the wheels off, you get the inner guard out. There's screws inside the inner guard that take it out. There's also this guard that comes out as well on the inside. They are with they're either Torx or Allen keys, I'm not sure. That sits in there somewhere, in there, like that. Anyway, but besides all that, you've got to get it out. Also remove the undersill underneath the engine and all that area that's underneath there. There are multiple screws underneath. There are Torx underneath there as well. I think they're T30s that are underneath. There's Allen keys that are underneath, and screws that are underneath that plate that goes underneath the engine. You've got to get that off. Now, you need to take the inner guard out of both sides. I did for access, because I needed to get inside that part there to get to some of the belts and things that are in there. Okay, now the screws to hold all the front on here, there's one underneath here, there's two or three there, and then there's one underneath down there as well. That all comes apart. You can see that's there's the air filter floating there. So you do the same thing on the other side, and you release the bolts that are underneath the front as well. There's a couple of bolts, there's a couple of screws, there's a screw there, I think, and an Allen key there, and a large Allen key here that's right underneath the front panel. You release all those. Then on the top of the engine, you've got to get to these guys. 1, 2, 3, 4. You get to those. And really then the front of the car is ready to come off. You pull these away from the body. They come off in this direction. Unclips. There's a couple of clips. 1, 2, 3, 4 clips in there. But then there's a major one at the front here, and the only way to get that off is you bang there forward, and it will release. So you just bang it with your hand. You don't need a tool or anything. Just get in there with the palm of your hand, and you give it a shove forward, and it will release it all. Now, the headlights will still be in. There they are down there. I'll show you where they bolt in just a sec. Okay, so this, after you've undone those bolts, this will all just come off. Takes a little bit of juggling. There are a couple of connectors that need to come off. There's one down there as well, and there's one on this side, which are for the fog lamps. That'll all come off. Rightio. The next thing that I did was started on all the pipes and things that are on the top of the engine. This is all loose right at the moment, it's all stuff falling down, but there's your airbox. They come off on these parts here. There's one there, there's one down deep inside here. You probably can't see, there's a pipe. You've got to crack them off. So what you do is, they are this style. What you do is you get a screwdriver in the top of that loop that's there. Where's one that's done up? There's one that's still done up. You get a screwdriver in the top of the loop, and it comes apart. It's got a little hook that goes over the top. It will come off in this direction, and then it will release and let you let you at it. They come off quite easily, and you can squeeze them back on with pliers or parrot nose pliers. They will squeeze back into place, and you need to get them back on. So this comes off. This comes off. There's a couple of pipes and things that are on there. Then you've got to get the inlet. It's in front of the MAF filter here. Undo that. Little yellow pops up. Lets you squeeze that tab in to get that off. This all comes off and unclips. You do the same quick clasp connector on there. There's a quick clasp connector down there as well. This hose here is the cross hose that goes over in the engine. That has the same sort of clip on it. That'll wiggle off of there. Then this will all come out. Be careful of securing clips and all those sort of things, because there'll be a few of those that are sort of in place there as well. Okay, so starting to get into the engine there. There's a couple of these sort of things that hold pipes, particularly the pipes for the steering pump that's there. They all need to be carefully released by getting a screwdriver in there and prying it open. Then there's this one that's here. There's your reservoir for the steering. Couple of bolts that go in the top of there. This will remove. Then I didn't start on this one next. The next thing I did after that was take the crossbar off the front. So there's the crash bar that has a couple of bolts, four major bolts that go into this area here. They go through there. But first you've got to get the headlights out of the way. The headlights have a secure down the bottom, and they have two securing screws on the top, which are there and I think there. So on the passenger side there is a large connector and then a long connector, whereas the driver's side in Australia, driver's side only has the single connector that's on there. Now they come apart by sliding the grey. See how that isn't over the top? That moves back in that direction to lock in place, and then it slides to release clips inside, so it will pull straight off. They come off fairly easily. Big pin off the top there. That one, forgotten where that went to, but anyway, that's not the point of this video. Okay, so then they come out. They just wiggle out after you undo the bolts. I think the lower one there does up on that one, but then all this crash bar comes out. Okay, the crash bar won't come off straight away. Let's start on the top first. Okay, undo this guy. 3 bolts. One thing I did before I moved it is I scribed the shape of where those flanges were on the metal there before I took it off, just so I've got half a chance of getting it in the right position. Okay, undoing it, as you can see, a couple of major bolts here. There's also turbo piping that's on there. There's screws for all that. That bracket will come off. There's various clips and plastic piping and things like that. There's this one here that has a connector on it. That needs to come off. So you just need to inspect along here and make sure there's nothing on there. Then all of this is attached to the crash bar there and there. Then this will come off. Now, radiator mounts, same side, same on the other side, and this will come off. See if I can get it off with one hand. There we go. Okay, right. So then there's that bar on the front. Put that out of the way. Took the actuating cable off of it. Comes off very easily. Remember where that came from. Crash bar has 4 major bolts. That's it there. Then it comes off. Just comes off like that. Okay. Rightio, crash bars off the front. Starting to expose more of the front of the car. Air intake here, it's got a couple of bolts holding it in place. I'm relying that you probably have a bit of mechanical knowledge and you can work it out, but this is the way that I sort of took it apart first of all. So there's a couple of screws and things that are on that as well. Right, so the alternator would be in there, but it's not there right now because it's out. So next thing I did was we need to move the motor so that we can relieve the weight on the front engine mount there. And so what I did is I got a scissor jack underneath the housing, underneath the sump I mean, a block of wood, you know, put it up to a right height, because the idea is if you use an oil jack, it may sink over the time that the car's sitting there, and so I needed something that was going to hold it in place. Okay, right, so you wind it up half an inch or so, take a little bit of the weight off it, then you've got to get up here to undo these bolts. Okay, right, so one of the things you're going to need is you need Torx sockets. Okay, so Torx sockets, these guys here, this is an E18. That's the E18 that fits on these guys here. So these go into the mount itself. There's a couple of bolts there. Once you've taken the weight off the engine and off the mount, jacked it up a little bit, only half an inch or so, you've just got to take the weight off of this guy here. There are bolts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 major bolts that will let you undo all of this. Then this comes out. You have to feel whether you're still loaded on the engine mount by the height of the jack that's underneath, but you can do that quite easily. Right, this comes out, big piece like that. Okay. Now, you have to get the belt cover off so that you can get to that. The reason you take this out of the way is you've got to release the belts. This is the way that I found easy to do it. You may have a different way to do it. There's the belt that came off it. There's 2 belts. Okay, so I used this is Torx again. You can see that there. It's only a little Torx. When I say little, I'm not sure exactly the size of it, but bolts that come in there are Torx. So I squeezed that little adapter in there, and that will let you undo 1, 2, 3, 4. I think there's only 4. Yeah, 4 bolts. They're a little bit of a pain to get to, but you undo them and it's not too bad. Then this comes off. Now, I took this off as well because I wanted to get to the idler. This one here. This is the idler that looks after the belt that is on the front here. It's the front belt that looks after steering, air compressor, and goes right down the bottom of the motor for the bottom pulley. Right. There's bolts in the front here. They're regular. I think they're like T16 or something like that. T18 bolts that go in the front there. The only way to get to these bolts, that one, and one on this side, is you got to jack the motor up a little bit, hence the jack that's underneath. You push the motor up, you get your socket or your crescent in there, you undo those there. Then there's more on the bottom. There's another 2 on the bottom. So the way to get to those is you get underneath there and you get up inside there after you've dropped the engine down. I drop the engine down until it touches that cross member there, the subframe. So that will go onto the subframe. Don't put too much weight on it because I find, you know, they're just pipes, so it won't hold the weight. Rightio. So you jack that up and down depending on how the axis is for the bolts. Then this guy comes off. Right, you can see there, that's the bolts that are on the front. Rightio. So you've taken that off, then you get access to all of this. Right, so this guy, the idler, sits down in here. That one bolts onto that spot there. That's the pressure that keeps the tension on it. And so what you do is you've got to take the tension off of this so that you can release the belt. So I got just get it. Right, I got a crescent onto that. This is 12 inch. It's about a 22 inch. If you've got a spanner or something like that you can get into the front of the motor, remember this is in here. If you can get in there with that, you can get that onto there and use it to pry against the piston here, or piston spring. That will take the weight off the belt like that. It will let you take the belt off the front of the motor. There's the belt. Okay, ribbed belt. Sits on steering, front of the aircon, and the main crank. Okay, you get that out of the way. Right. Okay, then it's the alternator. Alternator would sit right there. Okay, let's have a look at the alternator. This guy here, as I said, that would sit in there, in that sort of orientation. On the lower part of the alternator, there is a massive bolt. Let's get that. The bolt that's on the bottom is that guy there. 18 mil, front and back. It's in that orientation. So the bolt comes out towards the middle of the motor, and it has a big bolt, a big nut on the front. That nut, I found that I couldn't get to until I removed the tensioner that was there, because it's behind it. It's in there. So that bracket there is the bracket for the lower part of the alternator. The upper part of the alternator does up there. Allen key. Allen key goes into there. This is for a shroud that sits down the front of the alternator. Okay, so getting to the back half of that is under the engine. If you can get underneath there and get up inside that part, you can actually get your hand in there to get to the back of the bolt. Now, I found it wasn't terribly tight. I got a spanner in there. It all came undone. Now, the exciting part is actually getting it out of that recess. This is why the whole disassembly. Now, once you disconnect the top pulley there, the top bolt, the alternator will rock forward about 20-30 mil, not very far at all. However, just enough to be able to get the stretch belt off. You get it off by getting your hand underneath here. You can get onto the alternator pulley, and with your other hand that's holding the camera right now, you can slowly rotate it until it comes off here. You rotate, and it comes off further and further and further and further, and then eventually pops off the front. It's a stretch belt. It only goes between the alternator and the compressor pump. Right, once you got that guy off, then you got half a chance. You get that bolt out, and the alternator should come out from this area. Right, now this area is radiator, intercooler, oil, air conditioning, all in one. It sits in a great rubber grommet down the bottom. Can't see it. It's a great rubber grommet down there. What I'm saying by that is that it actually, you can lift it up and it moves out of the way. Now, many clips need to come undone to release all of this, to get it all out of the way. First thing in the job, of course, was taking the battery off. Different story. Anyway, I took this hose off the front. It had many clips. It'll let it move a little bit further. There are lots of little clips and things, so you don't just pull. Look at what you're doing, how many things you've got to release to be able to get this to move. Now, when that thing comes out of its mount and goes forward, like that, there you go, I'm just moving it enough, you can get the alternator out from inside there. I didn't worry about, you can get it out by taking the air conditioning compressor and getting underneath, but you've got to drop the gas out of the aircon because the pipes are solid almost. So you can do that. You can get from underneath and move some stuff around. I've seen some people take the subframe out of the way so you can get to all those places. I didn't worry. I thought I would do this so I didn't have to recompress, didn't have to dry the aircon and all that sort of stuff, which is just a pain in the butt. Anyway, right, so that's what I had to do to get it out. I got it out here, came out, and that will let me, now that I've got the new one and a new stretch belt, I'm going to put that in, and it shouldn't be too bad. Now, the reason I do all this is because some people say you can jack the engine up high enough to be able to get the alternator past the steering pump, but the steering pump is as big a job to get off as doing all what I've done. So I guess that's it for the moment. I'm going to put it all back together and make sure that it all comes undone. So you need some Allen keys, Allen key sockets. You need some torque sockets to undo your torques that undo there. And good luck, I suppose. See ya.